Ladies and gentlemen, letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is one of the most powerful expressions of self-worth. When you choose to release a relationship that no longer honors your value, you are making a conscious decision to recognize your own importance, dignity, and emotional well-being. Self-worth is not about arrogance or ego. It's about deeply understanding that you are worthy of love, respect, and reciprocity. Many people stay in unbalanced relationships because they fear loneliness or believe that they must prove their worth to others. But the truth is, your worth is not up for negotiation. It doesn't increase or decrease based on how someone else treats you. When someone continually disrespects you, disregards your feelings, or fails to show up for you emotionally, holding on to them sends a message to your subconscious mind that their behavior is acceptable. Over time, this can chip away at your self-esteem, leaving you feeling unworthy and unlovable. But the moment you choose to let go, when you decide that your peace and self-respect matter more than begging for love or waiting for change, you step into your power. You begin to reclaim your narrative and re-establish the belief that you are enough exactly as you are. Self-worth means understanding that being alone is not a punishment. It's a powerful space for healing and rediscovery. When you let go of someone who doesn't deserve you, you make room for something better love, better energy, and a better version of yourself. You shift your focus from trying to fix someone else to nurturing and honoring yourself. You stop sacrificing your needs for someone who would never do the same for you. Letting go is also a form of protection. It protects your heart from further damage and preserves your emotional energy for relationships that uplift rather than drain you. It teaches you to set boundaries, to say no when something doesn't feel right, and to prioritize your mental health over temporary attachment. You begin to realize that someone who truly deserves you would never put you in a position to question your value in the first place. Self-worth allows you to break free from the toxic cycles of over-giving, over-apologizing, and over-explaining. It reminds you that you don't need to shrink yourself to be loved, and that real love never requires you to abandon yourself. The more you embody self-worth, the less tolerance you have for emotional breadcrumbs or one-sided relationships. You begin to crave depth, mutual effort, and a connection rooted in authenticity and respect. It's also important to understand that letting go doesn't mean you didn't love, or that the relationship had no meaning. It means that you've grown enough to recognize that love alone isn't always enough. Respect, effort, and alignment matter too. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away, even when your heart wants to stay. Ultimately, self-worth is the foundation for every healthy decision you will ever make. It's the voice that reminds you that you don't have to chase what's not meant for you. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I deserve better," and has the courage to act on it. When you let go of someone who doesn't deserve you, you're not just ending a chapter. You're rewriting the entire story of how you expect to be loved, seen, and treated. And that shift, that's where real transformation begins. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is not just an act of self-respect. It is a direct pathway to emotional freedom. Emotional freedom means being released from the invisible chains that keep your heart, mind, and spirit tied to a person or situation that no longer serves your highest good. It is the liberation that comes when you stop giving your energy to someone who drains you, manipulates your kindness, or simply cannot meet you at the level of love and respect you deserve. When you're connected to someone who doesn't value you, you often live in a constant state of emotional tension. You overthink, question your worth, replay conversations, and exhaust yourself trying to fix or prove something. You begin to tie your peace to their actions or moods, and your self-esteem becomes dependent on their validation. In this emotional prison, your happiness is no longer yours. It's in the hands of someone who never earned that power. Letting go breaks those chains. It is the conscious decision to reclaim your emotional space and stop tolerating anything that costs you your peace. It allows you to step out of a reactive state and into a centered, empowered one. No longer are you riding the emotional roller coaster of inconsistency or hoping that someone who constantly disappoints. You will one day become who you wish they were. Emotional freedom begins with acknowledging the truth: love is not supposed to hurt more than it heals. It's not supposed to confuse, belittle, or make you feel less than. When you let go of someone who doesn't deserve you, you're not giving up on love. You're giving up on suffering disguised as love. You're finally choosing clarity over chaos, self-respect over settling, and peace over pain. This kind of freedom brings with it a deep inner calm. The silence that once felt like loneliness now becomes sacred. You start to hear your own voice again. You begin to trust your intuition, rediscover your passions, and feel a renewed sense of lightness in your soul. What once felt like loss now begins to feel like space. Space to heal, to grow, and to receive the kind of connection that truly honors who you are. Letting go doesn't mean you never cared. It means you care enough about yourself to walk away from what breaks you. Emotional freedom doesn't happen overnight, but every step you take in releasing that attachment clears more space for joy, clarity, and authentic love. Another powerful aspect of emotional freedom is detachment. Not coldness, but clarity. You no longer obsess over their choices, their absence, or their behavior. You stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" and start affirming, "I am enough and I deserve more." You learn to accept that sometimes people don't change, and closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you deciding to move forward, whether you ever get an apology or explanation or not. With emotional freedom, your energy returns to you. You stop begging for attention or love. You stop explaining your worth. You stop hoping that someone else will finally give you what you're meant to give yourself: love, safety, and validation. In letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you, you don't just regain control over your heart, you reclaim your life. You make room for real love, and more importantly, you fall in love with your own peace. That's the essence of emotional freedom, no longer being held hostage by the wrong person, and instead, being fully present in your own worth, your own light, and your own power. And from that place, everything changes. Detachment is one of the most powerful tools you can use when letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you. It's not about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about creating healthy space between your emotions and someone else's behavior. Detachment is the conscious decision to stop allowing another person's actions, moods, or presence to control your inner world. It is a form of emotional self-protection and maturity that allows you to reclaim your peace and power. When you're deeply attached to someone who consistently mistreats, neglects, or undervalues you, your sense of self becomes blurred. You may find yourself making excuses for their actions, justifying their absence, or minimizing your own needs to avoid conflict or rejection. This kind of emotional entanglement keeps you trapped in a cycle of hoping, waiting, and tolerating, even when all signs point to the fact that the relationship is unhealthy or unbalanced. Detachment breaks that cycle. It is the internal shift from, "I need them to change so I can be okay," to, "I choose to be okay, even if they never change." This shift is powerful because it brings the focus back to you, your choices, your healing, and your well-being. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about the person entirely. It means you stop letting their dysfunction define your worth or dictate your peace. One of the greatest misconceptions about letting go is that it's an act of bitterness or revenge. In truth, detachment is the opposite. It's an act of love. Not for them, but for yourself. It says, "I love myself enough to walk away from what harms me. I respect myself enough to stop participating in situations that diminish me." That's the strength behind true detachment. It's not weakness. It's not giving up. It's choosing your life over their chaos. Spiritually and emotionally, detachment clears space. It allows you to return to yourself and reconnect with your intuition. When you're no longer tied to someone else's dysfunction, you begin to see things more clearly. The fog of denial lifts. You start to recognize the red flags you once ignored. You start to heal from the emotional wounds that have been quietly bleeding under the surface. You find peace not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer forcing yourself to hold on to something that hurts. Detachment also helps you set boundaries. It allows you to say, "This is not for me," and mean it. It gives you the inner stability to walk away without second-guessing your decision. And most importantly, it reminds you that your value is not dependent on how anyone else treats you. Your worth is inherent. You don't have to earn love by overgiving, explaining, or begging. You simply have to know who you are and act accordingly. Letting go through detachment may feel painful at first, especially if your heart was deeply invested. But over time, you'll realize that what you were holding on to wasn't love. It was fear, comfort, or illusion. Real love doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep someone else. Real love supports, uplifts, and nurtures. Anything else is a lesson, not a life sentence. In the end, detachment is not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of clarity. It's the decision to stop suffering over someone who has already shown you who they are. And once you make that decision, you take the first real step toward emotional freedom, self-respect, and healing. That is the true power of letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you, not just surviving the pain, but rising above it with grace. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is not just a decision. It's a profound act of inner strength. It's easy to hold on, to convince yourself things will change, or to stay out of fear of loneliness. But true strength lies in the ability to walk away from something that is no longer serving your highest good, even when your heart is still attached. Inner strength is what empowers you to say, "I deserve better," and to follow through with actions that align with that truth. Inner strength is not about being emotionless or unaffected. It's about feeling every ounce of pain and still choosing yourself. When you're deeply involved with someone who undervalues, disrespects, or mistreats you, it chips away at your self-worth. You begin to doubt your instincts, silence your needs, and sometimes even question your reality. Reclaiming your strength starts with recognizing this pattern and deciding that you will no longer allow someone else's behavior to define your value. The first step in tapping into your inner strength is self-honesty. It requires the courage to look at the relationship without the lens of hope, fantasy, or fear. You have to acknowledge the truth, that someone who truly values you would not put you in a position to question your worth. This kind of clarity takes immense inner power, because it often means facing pain, disappointment, and grief head-on, without running from it. Once you've acknowledged the truth, inner strength helps you move from victimhood to empowerment. You shift your focus from what the other person did or didn't do to what you are going to do now. Instead of waiting for closure, you create it. Instead of hoping for an apology, you give yourself the validation you were looking for. Instead of staying in a space that drains you, you make the brave choice to walk away. Inner strength also involves consistency. Letting go isn't a one-time act, it's a daily decision to not return to what broke you. It's choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over attachment. Every time you resist the urge to text, call, or revisit old memories, you build that strength. You remind yourself that you are not dependent on anyone else to feel whole. Healing is never linear. There will be moments when you miss the person, doubt your choice, or feel the urge to go back. But this is where your inner strength becomes your compass. It keeps you grounded in your decision. It whispers, "Remember why you walked away." When your heart starts to waver, it reminds you that pain is temporary, but peace is priceless. Moreover, inner strength doesn't just help you let go, it transforms you in the process. You become more self-aware, emotionally resilient, and spiritually aligned. You begin to set boundaries not as walls but as gates that protect your energy and invite in only those who match your standards. You learn to trust yourself more deeply, knowing that you can survive loss and still thrive. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is not a sign of weakness. It is a powerful declaration of self-love. It is you rising above your fear of being alone and choosing to be whole on your own. It's you stepping into your worth, even when it hurts. In the end, your inner strength is your anchor. It keeps you grounded when emotions try to pull you under. It helps you rebuild your identity outside of that relationship. And most importantly, it lights the way toward a future where you are no longer settling, but receiving the love, respect, and peace you truly deserve. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is not just an act of strength. It is the beginning of deep emotional and spiritual healing. And many people stay in unworthy relationships because they fear the pain of release. But the truth is, the longer you hold on to what hurts you, the more you delay the healing your soul is craving. True healing begins the moment you decide that your peace is more important than their presence. Healing is not about forgetting what happened or pretending the pain doesn't exist. It's about facing that pain, allowing yourself to feel it, and then choosing to move through it rather than staying stuck in it. When you let go of someone who mistreats, manipulates, ignores, or takes you for granted, you create space for your heart to breathe again. You give yourself the chance to reconnect with who you are without the distortion of toxic influence. At first, healing can feel like heartbreak. The mind struggles with silence, the body misses the routine, the heart aches from absence. But those feelings are part of the detox, part of releasing the emotional toxins that built up during the relationship. It's important to allow yourself to grieve what was, even if it was never truly what you deserved. Grieving is not weakness, it's necessary for cleansing the soul. As you begin to heal, clarity starts to return. You start to recognize the patterns that kept you stuck. You see how often you settled, how often you justified their behavior, and how much of yourself you gave away in hopes of being loved in return. Healing is the process of returning to yourself, rebuilding trust in your own voice, your boundaries and your intuition. Letting go also allows you to reclaim your energy. When you're involved with someone who doesn't deserve you, your energy is constantly drained. You're investing in a relationship that takes without giving, demands without appreciating, and expects without reciprocating. Healing restores your balance. It reminds you that your energy is sacred and that not everyone deserves access to it. One of the most powerful aspects of healing is self-forgiveness. Many people beat themselves up for staying too long, ignoring red flags, or losing themselves in the process. But healing invites compassion. It says you didn't know better, but now you do. Healing encourages you to take those lessons and transform them into wisdom rather than shame. Over time, healing shifts your perspective. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. You start to realize that letting go wasn't about rejection. It was about redirection. You were not meant to stay in a space that diminished your light. You were meant to outgrow it, to rise above it, and to walk into something better, something that matches the love you are capable of giving. Healing also softens the heart. It helps you release bitterness, not for them, but for yourself, because carrying anger and resentment only continues the pain. Forgiveness is not about excusing their behavior, but about choosing your peace over prolonged suffering. It's saying you no longer have power over my emotions. In the end, healing is a journey back to wholeness. It's not quick or easy, but it's worth every step. The power of letting go lies in what it opens up for you. Peace, clarity, joy, and a deeper connection to yourself. You are not losing something by walking away from someone who didn't deserve you. You are gaining everything that you had been denying yourself for far too long, and that is where true healing begins. Establishing and honoring your boundaries is one of the most powerful steps you can take when letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you. Boundaries are not walls. They are lines drawn with self-respect. They define what is acceptable and what isn't in your emotional, mental, and spiritual space. When someone repeatedly crosses those lines, disrespects your worth, or diminishes your energy, letting go becomes an act of self-love, not loss. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear being rejected or seen as difficult. But the truth is, those who genuinely care about you will respect your limits. Those who don't, who manipulate, guilt-trip, or ignore your needs, are showing you they were never aligned with your highest self. And that's when letting go becomes necessary. You don't need to shrink yourself for people who can't honor your value. The boundaries begin with clarity. You have to know what you want, what you deserve, and what you will no longer tolerate. When you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't deserve you, your boundaries are often blurred. You make excuses. You compromise your standards. You allow behaviors that slowly chip away at your self-worth. Over time, this leads to resentment, exhaustion, and emotional disconnection from yourself. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is a declaration: I will no longer betray myself to keep someone else comfortable. This is where boundaries transform your life. They teach you that it's okay to say no, that you don't have to explain your value, that you are not responsible for fixing, saving, or tolerating people who choose to mistreat you. When you finally walk away, you may feel grief, but what you're really doing is reclaiming your space, energetically and emotionally. You're closing the door on a connection that was draining you and opening the door to your own healing. Boundaries allow you to recover your voice, your clarity, and your power. As you begin to rebuild, you start to notice you ways used to abandon yourself to keep someone else around. You begin to repair your inner self, the part of you that kept quiet to avoid conflict, that overextended out of fear, that stayed when it should have walked away. With stronger boundaries, you no longer compromise your peace for temporary attention or affection. What many people don't realize is that boundaries protect love. They don't destroy it. If a relationship ends because you enforced your limits, then that relationship was conditional and unhealthy to begin with. The right people in your life will honor your boundaries, not resent them. The wrong people will guilt you, shame you, or withdraw when you finally stand up for yourself. That reaction tells you everything you need to know. Boundaries also help you avoid repeating patterns. Once you recognize the signs of someone who doesn't deserve your time or energy, you're less likely to fall into similar dynamics again. You become more discerning. You know what red flags to look for. You recognize the difference between love and control, between care and convenience. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is painful, but it's also powerful. It means you've stopped asking someone to see your worth and started seeing it for yourself. Boundaries are the bridge between your pain and your peace. They guide you away from what wounds you and toward what uplifts you. In the end, boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about making space for the people, experiences, and energy that are truly aligned with your highest self. They are how you protect your healing, your heart, and your future. And that is the true power of letting go. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is one of the most painful yet powerful acts of self-respect you can make. At the center of this transformation, one essential truth: clarity. Clarity is the light that cuts through confusion, emotional fog, and wishful thinking. It is the quiet, undeniable knowing that says, "This is not love, this is not enough, I deserve more." Without clarity, we stay stuck, hoping, waiting, rationalizing. But with clarity, we take back our power. Clarity often comes softly at first. It might show up as an inner whisper that says something feels off. Maybe you've been making excuses for their behavior, forgiving the same patterns repeatedly, or accepting the bare minimum. Perhaps you've given so much that you barely recognize yourself anymore. Clarity asks you to pause and reflect of, why am I doing this? What am I actually getting in return? Am I being valued or merely used? The truth is, many people stay in relationships long after they've realized they are not being treated right. They stay out of fear, comfort, or the hope that things will change. But clarity disrupts that illusion. It is the awakening moment when you stop sugar-coating the truth. You realize that love should not hurt more than it heals. That you shouldn't have to chase someone to be chosen. That loyalty to someone who depletes you is not strength. It's self-abandonment. Clarity doesn't come from outside validation. It's not something your friends or family can give you, though their perspective might help. True clarity comes from within. It arrives when you quiet the noise and get honest with yourself. It's what allows you to separate fantasy from reality, potential from patterns. Clarity reminds you that you are not here to fix or earn love. You are here to experience it fully, mutually, and with respect. Once you have clarity, letting go becomes less of a struggle and more of a necessity. You may still feel pain, but it is no longer clouded by confusion. You're not asking, what if they change? Instead, you're asking, why did I settle for this for so long? And that shift changes everything. It marks the beginning of your healing journey and the end of your emotional entrapment. Clarity also helps you recognize your role in the dynamic, not to blame yourself, but to reclaim responsibility for your choices. You begin to see where you compromised your standards, ignored your intuition, or tolerated mistreatment. With that insight, you can break the cycle and rebuild from a place of truth. Letting go with clarity doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care enough about yourself to walk away. You're no longer looking for closure from the other person. You're creating your own. You're no longer waiting to be seen. You're seeing yourself. You understand that someone who truly values you would never put you in a position where you have to question your worth. The power of clarity is that it brings peace. Yes, you might grieve the loss, but you will no longer carry the weight of confusion, betrayal, or emotional chaos. You will feel lighter, freer, more grounded. You will start to recognize red flags faster and trust your intuition more deeply. Your vision clears not just about that relationship, but about your life. In the end, clarity is the foundation of emotional freedom. It allows you to walk away not in bitterness, but in strength. It reminds you that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and the other person, is to let go. Because when you have clarity, you stop settling for fragments of love and start waiting for the real thing. Letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is not just an emotional decision. It is a spiritual awakening, a radical act of empowerment. It's the moment when you stop handing your worth to someone else and start claiming it for yourself. It is when you rise from self-doubt and step into the bold truth of who you are. Empowerment begins the moment you acknowledge that being treated poorly is not a reflection of your value, but of their inability to recognize it. Often, we stay in relationships far longer than we should because we hope people will change, because we fear being alone, or because we've convinced ourselves that love must be earned. But true empowerment says, I don't have to prove I'm worthy. I already am. To be empowered is to choose yourself, even when it hurts. Letting go is painful, but staying with someone who chips away at your self-esteem is far more damaging in the long run. Empowerment gives you the strength to say, I deserve better, and not just say it, but believe it. It's not about blaming or shaming the other person. It's about setting yourself free from a dynamic that was never aligned with your highest self. Letting go empowers you to reclaim your voice. In toxic or unbalanced relationships, it's easy to lose yourself. You might have silenced your needs, ignored your intuition, or constantly compromised to keep the peace. Empowerment is the process of reversing that damage. You start to speak up for yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop begging to be seen, heard, or chosen. Instead, you begin to choose you, your peace, your growth, and your joy. When you let go of someone who doesn't deserve you, you also empower your future. You make space for the kind of love that honors your soul. You stop clinging to broken connections and start building boundaries that protect your energy. You move out of survival mode and into intention. You begin attracting people who mirror the respect you've begun to show yourself. Empowerment doesn't mean you won't feel grief or sadness. It doesn't mean the process will be easy. But it does mean that even through the tears, you're walking in the right direction. Empowerment doesn't erase the pain, it transforms it. It uses your pain as fuel to awaken your strength, your wisdom, and your capacity for self-love. It also teaches you discernment. When you've been through the storm of letting go, you learn to see red flags more clearly. You learn to listen to your gut. You understand that love is not just about how much you give. It's about how much you're respected, appreciated, and met in return. Empowerment teaches you not to confuse effort with value and not to mistake crumbs for nourishment. Most of all, empowerment reminds you that your heart is not a place for someone to casually visit. It's a sanctuary, and not everyone deserves access to it. Letting go is how you raise your standards, protect your peace, and open the door to authentic connection. It's how you stop shrinking for love and start expanding in your truth. In the end, the power of letting go is the power to take your life back. It's the decision to stop pouring into a cup that never fills you in return. It's the declaration that your worth is not negotiable, and as you walk away, not in bitterness but in self-respect, you rise not as a victim of love, but as the author of your own healing.